Oh my god, guys, we are in the final stretch, the final 3 episodes of not only Doom Patrol Season 4, but Doom Patrol as a whole. Like, the series is coming to an end, and now after this episode, we have just 2 episodes left. It's insane. And episode 10 right here, Doom Patrol Season 4, episode 10, Doom Patrol. Wow. A lot happened in this episode, so we have a lot to talk about. I don't want to waste any time, guys, so if you haven't seen it yet, of course, go check it out on Max. Spoiler warning right now, but let's jump into this and break down Doom Patrol Season 4, Episode 10, Doom Patrol. And this episode is really all about the Doom Patrol's dying. They've lost their longevity. Obviously, last episode we had the musical episode with Immortimus, which was fantastic. I've been listening to those songs on repeat. I really hope they put them on Spotify at some point soon because, man, I'm going to be jamming out to that for a while. But we now get back to reality where the Doom Patrol, again, is dying. They're all super old now, and they're all kind of taking a different approach to it. And plus, we've got some other conflicts showing up here, like, for example, the Butts. The Butts are back. You know, we saw the future with the Butt-pocalypse. We didn't know if it was going to actually come true, but oh, it is coming true, because the Butts, we get to find out a little bit more about them here. So, at the beginning of the episode, we get an appearance from the Butt Hunter, which I've been a little confused this whole time, because we saw the Butt Hunter in the beginning of the season. I believe it was episode 2 or 3, maybe. It was Butt Patrol. That was the name of the episode. This whole time I thought it was still the same character as Beard Hunter, who we saw in both Season 1 and Season 2. Turns out, no, it's a different character, just conveniently played by the same actor. So Beard Hunter and Butt Hunter are different characters. I really hope that his powers are a little different than Beard Hunter's, because of course Beard Hunter's, he was able to locate the beards by eating the beards, so let's hope it's not the same thing for Butts. But he makes an appearance at the beginning of this episode. He's confronted by the Butts, and he's basically, the Butts ask him for help, and they need him to help find somebody. Now, we don't get to see Butt Hunter again in this episode. I'm not sure if we will see him again, because it's never really explained who he's looking for. But my assumption is that it is the doctor lady. I don't know what her name is, but we get to see her in this episode. We've seen her throughout the season. She's the one that helped create the Butts, and there were 2 conjoined twin Butts. There was Nicholas and there was Theodore. One of them she adopted. That, of course, was Nicholas. And we saw earlier in the season that Nicholas was almost like a pet to her, but we get to find out in this episode that Nicholas is seems almost like they're in love, and Nicholas is like her husband, so she's married to a Butt. But she has a little conversation with Nicholas because they got a message from Theodore. Theodore is rising up against the humans. He wants to start this Butt-pocalypse. He wants to start this war on humans, and he wants his brother's help. Of course, Nicholas wants nothing to do with that. We find out here that we have kind of like good Butts and bad Butts, and Nicholas is one of the good Butts, and Theodore, his twin brother, his conjoined twin brother, is one of the bad ones. He's the leader of the bad ones. And so basically he gives his brother no choice, as now this doctor lady that Nicholas has this love thing going on with has been transformed into a Butt. So she is now a Butt herself. So Nicholas supposedly has no choice but to join Theodore. So I'm really interested to see where that goes, because we see in this episode that apparently humans can now be turned into Butts, and they can like shapeshift back and forth between human and Butt forms, which is really disturbing. But I'm definitely for sure interested to see where all that goes. We get to see the Butts come back at the end of the episode, kind of the beginning of the Butt-pocalypse. But let's talk about some of our other characters going on in this episode. Let's talk about the Doomies. So I want to start off talking about Vic, because Vic has a very small part to play in this episode, but we get the return of Phil Morris as Silas Stone, of course, Vic's father. We get a conversation between the two of them, talking about how Vic, of course, last season, he got rid of his cybernetics. He gave up being Cyborg, and he thought that that would make him whole again. He thought that that would make him feel like the man he used to be, like the man he wishes he still was. But it didn't. It really did not. So we get this kind of back and forth here in this episode about should he go back to being Cyborg, and I love the way that their relationship has grown so much throughout the seasons, because obviously Silas is the one that made him Cyborg in the first place, but here in this episode, 4 seasons in, Silas is actually giving him a choice, and he's actually like, you know, I'm not going to force anything on you, it's up to you. And as we see at the end of the episode, clearly his little musical number in last episode, Face the Future, really helped him come to this decision. Yeah, he needs to go back to being Cyborg. So at the end of the episode, he shows up as Cyborg. Cyborg's back. He even comes in with the booyah, of course, Cyborg's classic catchphrase from the comics. So I love seeing that. So yeah, basically, Cyborg's back, baby. So that's definitely really, really exciting for sure. Then we have, let's talk about Cliff. So Cliff, he wants to go back to Florida and see his daughter. Obviously, throughout this whole season, he's had the oven mitt on his hand because the first thing he touches, technically at this point, second thing now, he wants it to be his grandson, Rory. So he decides he wants to finally go to Florida, see his daughter, see Rory in person, and he asked Jane to come with him. And one of the things I loved about this episode is that it reunites our duos, because it's been so long since we've got to see just Cliff and Jane together for such a long period of time, just going on their fun little side adventures like they do in this episode. And this is kind of our last one that we get to see. But we get the same thing with Rita and Larry as well. Cliff and Jane is interesting though, because Cliff, obviously, you know, they're both dying. But Jane specifically, she starts putting that puzzle together, and she even says that she thinks she has dementia. And she ends up somehow getting into the underground, and like she sees the clothes of all of the other personas, but like in a pile of ashes. So it almost seems like all of the other personas are dead. She keeps getting flashes of Kay's father. So I'm really interested to see where this is going, because it's just given me good flashbacks to season 2, which was such a fantastic storyline for Jane and the underground. So I'm really excited to see how they end up concluding her story there. It's definitely going somewhere interesting. But transitioning into, again, our other duo, we have Rita and Larry. And Larry is struggling here. He and Mr. 104, Rama, actually kind of break up at the beginning of the episode. They kind of go their separate ways, but inevitably I do think that they are going to get back together by the end of the series, because, you know, Larry's finally found that one person that he actually can be with. So I'm really hopeful and excited for that. Larry's basically given up. He's like, oh, I'm looking for a burial spot. He literally starts digging his own grave. But then he comes in to see Rita, who... Rita is the complete opposite. She doesn't want to think about death, about dying, and she's trying to act like everything's normal. And we just get this great scene at the end of the episode. You know, we get to see these two reunite. They have a little bit of an argument, but then they come together in the end, and they're just sitting there talking about the good old times. And then they start to talk a little bit about the gossip with Larry and Mr. 104, and Rita's like, oh, give me all the juicy details and all this stuff. And I just love their friendship, their relationship. So I'm so glad that we got to see that little duo reunite in this episode as well. Then Jane and Cliff do come back because they had some car trouble, so they ended up not going to Florida. But we just get this fantastic scene towards the end of the episode where it's just the 4 of them, the original Doom Patrol themselves, original group of characters, just bonding, talking about the good old days, and, you know, Niles and all that stuff. And then they're like, oh, where'd Rouge go? And so then they're like, oh, Rouge was talking about in the beginning of the episode, she was gonna go see Isabel. So they decide they're gonna go try and rescue Rouge, but then Rita ends up passing out, and so they take her to her bed. And then this is when the rest of the Doomies decide, okay, they need to go and they need to rescue Rouge and get their longevity back. So they go to the theater where Isabel is performing, because Isabel is doing a one-woman show, and Rouge throughout this whole episode is like, we need to go, we need to get your longevity back, because apparently the little necklace, the Immortus necklace that Niles always wore that gave the immortality to the Doom Patrol, is now inside of Isabel's neck. So if they chop that off, then they get their immortality back, their longevity. But she ended up going alone, and we get a really interesting moment here. It was hilarious getting to see Isabel do her one-woman show, the story of Isabel. It was hilarious. Absolutely loved it. But we get to see that Rouge actually really relates to Isabel, because what they both really want is just to be liked. They want to be liked by everyone. And they just don't feel like they fit in, and that's all they want. They just want to fit in. They just want to be appreciated. And so you see the two actually bond, and talking about the Brotherhood of Evil, and Isabella's even like, oh, maybe we should reform that, and like, you know, I can be the queen of the world, I can be the queen of the universe. And Rouge is actually going along with it at first, but then she sees the longevity thing in the back of her neck, and then she whips out the blade from her hand, because, you know, she can shapeshift, and then Isabel freezes her. The Doom Patrol comes in, of course, with Vic now joining them as Cyborg. Rita's still back at Doom Manor, and then Isabel gets mad, so she sends them all into this little portal, which she says she's going to give them all the time they need or something like that. So I don't know exactly where they've been sent, but I'm definitely excited to find out. Of course, we're missing Rita, but the rest of the group is reunited. Again, just what a fantastic episode this was. I loved it so much. So much happened. There's so much great character development going on here. So many great character moments. Again, getting to see these duos back together was absolutely fantastic. So I loved it, guys. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about this episode, and what do you think is going to happen in the final 2 episodes of Doom Patrol? So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything that goes on in the DC life.